You wake up submerged in a filthy bathtub. Your consciousness slowly comes back, and you find yourself in a room you don't recognize. Your name is written in blood on the locked exit door, trapping you inside. On top of all that, you're naked, covered in bloody rags, and you have this wild urge to urinate. Hello, and welcome to Gaming with Jovy, and today we're taking a look at the first horror game from WildSphere, called Oxide Room 104. It is technically not their first horror game. They did make a third-person platformer called Not, but I actually feel like it's their first one because it's literally their first-person shooter with puzzle mechanics. I honestly didn't expect much when I decided to pre-order the physical copy of the game on PS5 because they essentially didn't release anything. They had a teaser trailer and they had a 9 minutes gameplay, which ended up being 7 minutes of cutscenes and 2 minutes of gameplay, right? The graphics was also very old gen off the bat, and it actually still is in the final release. And nothing can get me ready for that amazing voice acting.
What the hell? Oh, fuck! Shit! What the hell is going on here? What the fuck is that thing? Come on! Shit!
Dear God. It's still bad. Oh man, it is so bad.
It looks like you've met Eva. She's quite the hunter. She loves the smell of blood.
It's giving me so many right to hell vibes, you have no idea.
This is like a skinny little baby cow, ain't it? You ever slice an ear off of a baby cow? They scream and scream. It's funny.
But even with that said, I still wanted to keep an open mind because I love it when developers decide to push their boundaries and innovate and go into something, you know, they're not really familiar with, even if often it ends up being bad. But you know, failure is actually the best teacher if you essentially decide to learn from it. I sincerely hope that they do because I actually really liked the game, even if it ended up, you know, being a mixed bag overall. This is one of those titles where if you really want to appreciate it, you need to 100% it because there are multiple playthroughs in this game depending on the choices that you've taken. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to explore the creepy world, analyze the environment, and we're going to get all the missable achievements because I actually platinumed this game on PS5. And ultimately, we're also going to decipher this extremely convoluted story. So sit back, grab yourself something to drink, whatever it is, and let's dive deep into this dirty bathtub water called Oxide Room 104. So full disclaimer, I need to give 3 separate warnings at the beginning of this video. First one is pretty straightforward. I'm going to be spoiling the whole game. So if you were planning to play it at some point and you don't want spoilers, please leave and come back. If you actually don't mind minor spoilers and you want to figure out what this game is about, please keep watching until I essentially tell you otherwise. Secondly, I built this essay around my first playthrough of the game because this game really shines in its replayability and how the player interacts, especially the first times with the game. Lastly, this game contains a few sensitive subject matter as it contains visual gore and torture. So if you ever feel uncomfortable during the video, I won't take it personal, just leave, enjoy your day. And with all that said, let's get right into it. The game starts with a man driving on the road as he stops in front of a hotel. He gets out of the car and looks at his phone. He sees a message from the guy called Josh, telling him that the job didn't go as planned and that he needs to get his stuff out of the hotel. Angry, he throws his phone on the ground and goes to the reception area as he receives a follow-up text message urging him not to go inside the hotel, which doesn't make any sense if he wrote the exact opposite a few seconds ago, but whatever, we'll let it pass. Unaware of the warning, he knocks on the reception screen and turns around only to be knocked out by a fire extinguisher. We're submerged in a bathtub. We gasp for air and see bloody bandages around our limbs. We desperately get out of the water, only to black out once more.
My head.
A centipede crawls on our wrist, but we're too weak to do anything as we black out for the final time. Hopefully. Once we've woken up from my forced slumber, we can finally take control of our protagonist, and the first impressions of the controls are bad. They feel loose and imprecise. Movement is stiff and swings the cursor without any sense of precision, making it really hard to do basic actions like looking and picking up objects. The game was clearly made with PCs in mind, which means that there's a higher difficulty curve that I need to master if I want to play it properly. On the contrary, I also think that the bad controls work indirectly with the game's themes, which we will explore shortly, but I can't give it any merit because it was obviously not done on purpose. While I'm struggling with the controls, we get to look around and interact with the objects around the room. The drawer in front of the bathtub has 2 unlocked drawers containing notes that give us insight on what the protagonist is thinking. Full disclosure, I won't be reading all the notes in this video. They really make the game even more repetitive than it already is. So in order to make this video as enjoyable as possible, I'm essentially going to skip most of them and I'll end the game explaining the story. It's also the moment when the game explains itself, so it makes sense structure-wise, even if it's pretty much an exposition dump, which, to be fair, it totally is. Back in the bathtub, interacting with the middle drawer warns us that it's locked and it requires a key to be opened. On a side note, if you activate the radio on top of the drawer, you'll get to hear the song that played in the intro sequence, and you're rewarded with an achievement when the song ends. Inside the mirror storage, we can find a small box that requires a 3-digit code in order to unlock it, so we'll put it in our inventory for now. Above the box, there are a few containers, with the only interactable one being an antidote container. Behind us, we get to look at the exit door, which has the name Matt written in blood on it. Interacting with the writing makes the protagonist realize his name, which means that we now know whose perspective the game is based around. If the fact that his name written in blood on the door isn't cliche enough, the door is also locked. We turn left and lift the toilet seat. We get a few options, with urinating being one of them, and of course, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. And oh my god. I can't show his little transformers here, but trust me, it's pretty pitiful. At least we get to control the spray a little, which, you know, is a pretty nice add-on because they could have easily just made a rendered cutscene of it, so that's pretty cool. Once we're done, we get to examine the toilet again, and there's something at the bottom of the toilet. We get the option to pick it up and oh fuck, jeez, ah!
Oh, fuck. This is disgusting.
Yeah, my thoughts exactly, dude. We get the small key from it, and we can't even wash our hands in the bathtub or the sink. Like, why, dude? Why? That's just nasty. I know that hygiene is your least of your worries right now, but goddamn, you have water all around you. Why? It's whatever. It doesn't matter. Fuck it. We try the key on the door and it doesn't work. Interacting with the locked drawer and trying the key on it doesn't work either. So we get an additional option, interestingly enough, which is to use force on the drawer.
I think I can get it open. Shit!
We get knocked out and start bleeding from the back of our head. Using the antidote we got from the mirror doesn't fix the situation, so we grab our clothes from the drawer and put them on, unlocking 3 additional storage slots. We look around to see if we can find any item to heal ourselves, but nothing seems to work. We get to the door and try the key that we found in our pocket, and things get horribly wrong from here.
What? What the hell? Oh, fuck! Shit! What the hell is going on here? What the fuck is that thing? Come on! Shit!
It looks like
quite the hunter. She loves the smell of blood. Look, I'll be honest. I don't expect much of you. But for your own sake, can't you do any better? How is it that you get the smallest scratch and you bleed to death? And then we have to start everything from the beginning. I know you're useless, but at least try to not make it so noticeable. Try harder next time. Agreed? Well, let's get to work. As with any research, if you repeat the same experiment without changing any of the variables, you'll most likely get the same results. So, let's make some modifications. Don't worry. You'll only feel a small pinch.
And we're back at the bathtub. We get out of it the same way as before, and a quick glance at our limbs reassures us. So we wonder, did we restart the game? Glancing at the room, we realize that something has seemingly changed. The middle drawer that we forcibly removed isn't there anymore, and our clothes are already available to us. Items have moved around, and the antibiotic isn't in the mirror storage. The floor has cracked, showing us the interior support beams, and our name has slightly faded. We walk to the door, and this time it's unlocked, allowing us to leave the bathroom. Finally.
Shit.
The door on the left shakes, and interacting with us makes us realize that it's locked. We try our key on it, and it doesn't work, so we decide to look around. There's a window next to the bed, and nope! We go to the opposite end of the room, and open the drawers in the kitchen, where we'll find a few notes, including these two weird notes from someone called Evil? There's also a locked bread container, and our key doesn't unlock it, so we turn around and pick up the flashlight, which I'm surprised I didn't see beforehand, but it happens. Lost. We go back to the bathroom and examine it once more. We quickly realize that there's a locked container on the shelf, so we wishfully try our key on it and... Yes! Finally, it worked! We examine its content and find a lockpick inside. Interestingly enough, the box with the combination lock is nowhere to be seen this time. We exit the room, use the lockpick on the bread container, and finally the key to the front door, allowing us to finally leave the room and venture outside. We close the door behind us, and we're greeted by a lady covered in blood pointing behind us.
Hey.
We turn around and see the same monster that ripped our jaw, so Matt starts running in the opposite direction as the lady vanishes into thin air. We QT ourselves out of there and we're introduced to whatever the fuck that is. And what? A car? We swim to the surface, follow the creepy lady into the storage area, and hold the door shut. This is also the part where we get to see firsthand just how sound effects are essential to horror, and how their lack subtracts from the scene. Here's an unedited segment of what you just saw, and I want you to concentrate on the sound, or at least the lack thereof. Enjoy.
What the hell is going on here? Shit! Shit! Come on!
It's really sad that it got released in this state, because I really love the creature designs and the aesthetic of the game in general. What is shown is scary, and I just can't immerse myself because it's too bare bone, to the point that I can only focus on the flaws instead of feeling of powerlessness and disorientation that the game clearly is going for. On a side note, this game was made by two people, which explains the mishaps that we've seen so far, and to be fair, I am ready to cut them some slack for it, but all in all, it still doesn't change the fact that that's how I feel about it. Anyways, once it stops hitting the door, we get to look around the room to find the only weapon in the game, a horror classic that has become a trope at this point. the trusty and ridiculously strong revolver. Unfortunately, unlike other games, the aim mechanic is just weird. The fact that it zooms in for no reason is just so off-putting to me because it doesn't have a scope. It's like Matt concentrated his eyes so much that it zooms in front of him, bringing anything he sees closer to you. Although it's not that much of an issue, as it does indeed help the combat as you get a better sense of what you're aiming for. But the problem is that it suffers from the same janky controls that the rest of the game, which means that as cool as it is to wield a revolver, I'll probably end up stealthing the whole game. Examining the room further, we'll find some ammo, a map of the hotel, more documents, and a key to room 111. And no, this is not a Fallout reference, although I wish it was. Our inventory ends up being full at this point, so I drop off the items in the storage. I open the door and end up hitting myself with it, which honestly, that mechanic should be in so many more games. Like, imagine playing Call of Duty, right? You go into a room, you open the door, and you smack yourself with it and fall on the ground. It's ridiculous, but I love it. I hope more games do that. Oh, man. Anyways, we open the door for real this time, but there's nothing there. We peek outside, and it's completely empty. We leave the storage to get to experience the second best thing that this game has to offer. Its stellar, creepy atmosphere. There's a fog obscuring the view with some very atmospheric sounds that really set the mood and let you feel uncomfortable. I know it's really weird of me to give credit to the sound design when I just complain about the sound effects or lack thereof in the previous scene, but it's so apparent when you juxtapose both segments that it's impossible not to realize it, and wish that the same amount of love went towards all the other sound elements of the game. It's just that kind of atmospheric vibe that creates a sense of tension, keeping you on your toes as you're walking around in the area, even if you know that there's no one there. I ended up turning around a few times just because of the different sound cues, even if I finished the game multiple times at that point. On top of all that, the added scream of the lady piercing through the different layers of sound as you get closer to the pool is an amazing piece of sound design, and it makes you wonder what's happening while suggesting indirectly that you could actually be next. I also love how the place looks like a modern hotel, making it easy to relate while simultaneously disturbing us, as the questionable renovations done to the area, like the block stairs, random reinforced walls with planks of wood, with the piece of resistance being the minuscule graveyard at the far end of the hotel, clashes with our concept of what a hotel should be. It's enough to make us feel like something has gone horribly wrong, and that there's no comfort to be found in a place usually made with comfort in mind. Ultimately, it's a pretty effective way of encouraging the player to build a bond with the protagonist, because we can easily relate and understand his desire to leave. We don't want to be there as much as he does. With that in mind, we walk into room 111, use the key, and hope that we'll find the exit soon. Entering the room, we come face to face with the creature we saw earlier. Examining up close, we can see that it doesn't have a head, which is the game's explanation as to why it can't see, but instead follows all sounds that the protagonist makes. Walking, opening drawers, and using your gun will alert it and bring it towards you, so crouching is the best solution. In a game where you can't jump and the controls are this bad, you really need to time your movement and avoid any and all confrontation as much as possible. I personally don't understand how it can hear you, as last time I checked, ears are connected to the head, right? But I'll let it slide, as the enemy design is actually pretty sick. Continuing the observation, we can see that the body is split in half and ends at the lower abdomen. Teeth have grown out of the opening, morphing into what is best described as a mutilated mouth. We can also see that the split has gone right at the center of the chest, so each side of the mouth has what's left of their human breast, giving it a very feminine touch. The female characteristics also ooze in other ways, as the lower half clearly displays the feminine genitals, which are well portrayed by the tight feminine undergarments combined with the quantity of filth that fills all the cracks and openings on its body. The slimness and the curves of its leg muscles are only betrayed by its anorexic nature, which is more often seen on female subjects. All combined, it makes a really unsettling and somewhat relatable design, as it has enough traits for us to recognize what it was, while also keeping us repulsed and disgusted at what it has become. Interestingly enough, there's also a sense of sadness that glooms over it and forces you to stop and wonder, how did it even get to that point? Why does it walk in such a painful manner, with its existence lowered to feeding on anything that ends up in its path? It just makes me speculate, and that's why I think it's the strongest enemy design in the game by far. On a side note, it does remind me of the crocodile girl from the movie Tokyo Gore Police, and if you've never heard of it, there's a reason for it. That movie is pretty fucked up. We crouch walk around the room and try to go around it, but after a few attempts, eventually we get caught and start bleeding, which is represented by the small icon on the top right of the screen. Interacting with the jars to see if I can find something to heal myself ends up being in vain as I disappear into the murky waters of the bathtub again.
Hello. You know who I am? I'm you. Fine, forget it. You have no sense of humor. You know, I was thinking earlier, people like you are like flies drawn by the smell of shit. Your lives have no direction. You're only concerned with your own existence. I, however, have a purpose. My research and my technology will be the future. Biotechnology will change everything, and I will be the baby's father. But you've jeopardized everything. Everything because of your stupid business. You young people are obsessed with all those things. Bitcoins, NFTs, money controls you. Okay. I need you to go further. Eva's mind is not a pleasant place, but I need to know everything that's in your head. And you are the ones who brought that idiot girl. You can't say you don't deserve it. No. I need you to give me a hand with something. But seeing as you're a bit exposed here, I'll cut it off for you.
We get out of the bathtub once more and realize that the room is a lot rustier, giving it a profound orange taint. The water is now tainted red, which, you know, makes sense because we died twice, right? But it still doesn't explain why we have our limbs. We complete the same puzzle as before and exit the room, only to realize that things have changed here as well. This time, there's no cutscene greeting us when we exit the room. Arms are attached to what looks like openings with teeth stapled on the walls, and there's also some sort of tentacle plant located in front of the blocked entryway. New enemies aren't the only thing here that were added, as similarly as the bathroom, all metal beams have rusted, giving it an industrial and somewhat Silent Hill-like vibe. The car isn't in the pool anymore, and just as before, most item locations have changed. We grab key 111, and where did that come from? Why? I got gassed? I decided to go into room 111 to go see if I can find a cure, and I immediately get out because I couldn't find anything. I also remembered afterwards that I left an antidote in the storage container, so I walked towards it as this game doesn't have a run option, open the container, and die. Because I didn't know how to switch between my inventory and the storage inventory. Yeah, fuck me, right? And with that, we're back to the bathtub again.
You bore me. You keep dying and dying again and again. I thought we had already talked about this, but what could I expect from you? Okay, from the beginning. I need to know what the girl you brought was researching. I'm risking my neck, you know? So, we're going to try it one last time. Do it right. I'll make you into dog food. No hard feelings. By the way, one last thing. I think you'll be lighter without that extra leg.
And with that, we wake up in the bathtub again. Man, this game has too many fucking bathtubs. In case if you're having a hard time figuring out what the story is, don't worry. It's intentional. I grabbed all the documents and saw all the endings, and I can confidently state that only the good ending explains, well, anything and everything, actually. The girl that he mentioned in that cutscene is barely ever mentioned, and there's no explanation as to how any of this works until you get to the very end of the game, which, to be quite honest, I find quite alluring because it creates some intrigue and it pushes you to finish the game, which is, never a wrong thing. But at least we won't have to wait too long because, as the guy stated before, this is our last chance to get out of the hotel. So, determined to finally get some answers, we get out of the bathtub again and grab our clothes. We lift the toilet seat to see a leg sticking out of it. Reminiscing our loss, we turn towards the door and leave the room. We grab the gun, which is now on the sofa for some reason. Grab the flashlight and ammunition before realizing there's a huge plant on the kitchen table. It takes 3 bullets to kill it, and the key appears under it. Similar as before, the rusty decal consumed everything, and there's no cutscenes. We also can't roam as freely as before because the entities now hunt the main grounds. We sneak around it and enter the storage room where we'll find a backpack, giving us the maximum level of inventory. We grab the other resources from the room and pick up the key once more. We use the key and we're greeted with portraits of eyes hanging on the walls with arms coming out of all extremities. Just for a quick reminder, we were in this room when we died the first time. It's the room where I died analyzing that creature, so coming back here and having it look like this is very intriguing to say the least. We walk towards the kitchen and kill the plant, which only takes 2 bullets this time. We grab the key 219 from the table and grab the ammo lying around the kitchen. We also find a lockpick, which we use to access the bathroom. It contains more ammunition and an antidote. We exit the room and head towards 209 on the 2nd floor. That's also when we're greeted by the new enemy type, which looks like a Siamese twins fused on the wall, creating an entity that vomits a green concoction right in the middle of the room. It takes a total of 6 shots to put it down. There are also 2 plants here, with one on the side wall, which caught me off guard. Thankfully, the poisoning doesn't stack or get worse with every consecutive contamination, so I take my time, kill the plant in the kitchen, collect the stuff around the other plant before heading back the entrance and using an antidote there. Looking around, we find another note and a lot of ammunition. A quick observation, we used a total of 8 bullets in this room and we found 12, which foreshadows the rest of the game pretty well. This is also where I get lost, and I didn't find a key, so I wander aimlessly until I remembered that I previously got a key from killing that plant in the starting area. I head back, kill it, and indeed, the key was there. And that's exactly the moment where I realize what this game is. In its basic form, it's a straightforward key hunt. You use the key to enter a room and you're forced to deal with whatever's inside by either killing the creatures, stealthing around it in order to loot the area, to ultimately find the key that leads to another room. Rinse and repeat. Every room has a key guaranteed, so it becomes this Easter egg chase where finding a key as fast as possible becomes the main preoccupation and everything else becomes secondary. This is also where the game gets its escape room description, as you don't know what each room has, leading to a new scenario that requires some basic puzzle solving before moving to the next one. I personally believe that they're using the escape room title very loosely, as the solutions are almost always the same. Kill everyone in sight, open all the containers, drawers, and etc. It would have been fun to have some form of variation, which honestly does happen in the end of the game, and only if you decide to stick with it longer than most players, as you'll soon discover. Also, before you ask, no, you don't need to go in all the rooms in order to finish the game. But to be quite fair, you will end up in most of them, at least for in your first playthrough, because you wouldn't know what's the best optimized path to take. Just to give you an idea, my fastest playthrough ended up taking me about 28 minutes. And the first time I played the game, it took me more than 3 hours to fully complete it. So, it just shows you how much faster it can go once you know what to avoid. In order to keep this video interesting, I'm gonna skip the copycat rooms and show the more memorable ones, like the casino themed room. This serves as window dressing, unfortunately, as you can't actually play any of the games. You have to break the glass in the furniture to grab the key, while evading the monster, which sounds disappointing, but was actually done by design. I'll talk more about it later, so keep it in mind for now. There are also 2 rooms that have a special icon on the front door, with the first one being a gas mask. As it turns out, it's pretty straightforward, as unsurprisingly, it requires a gas mask in order to get inside, in addition of the key, of course. I honestly have no idea why a hotel would need a sticker like that, like why would it even have an issue of sorts, but you know what? It's better to have it than to get surprised on the moment. Ironically, the gas mask can be found on the same floor by following the path to the end of the corridor and picking it up in, you guessed it, a bathtub. Once inside the room, a cemetery is what awaits us, with arms coming out of the walls and a thick gas covering the floor in a similar color as the vomit from the Siamese type creature. The gas mask also makes it really hard to see, therefore Matt doesn't want to use his gun. We have to slowly walk around the cemetery, avoid the hands, and get inside the kitchen where the last wooden tombstone has the key placed on it. When you grab it, a creature spawns and comes straight towards you. And this is another part where the jank of the game really shows. It often charges straight towards you, attacks, and blocks the exit, making it impossible to pass, which means that you may very easily die, get frustrated, and have to restart the damn game. I found a game exploit actually by examining the save system of the game. The game saves when you open the door, use an item, and die, but getting attacked doesn't. So shutting down the game and doing a manual restart lets you retry with everything reset. Once I realized this, I was doing it a lot after a while, as there are moments where the game just feels unfair because of questionable design choices, and not because the player is making a bad decision. This is also how I found a glitch where I forcibly restarted the game only to appear at the last room of the game, which I'll get to later. Back at the task at hand. If you decide to unlock the bathroom door, you'll get attacked by the walking flesh thing, so it's best to leave that door locked. Room 108 has a weird metal door instead of a normal bathroom door, so after killing the Siamese twins and the monster hidden inside the door, you just find a key, which is weird as there's nothing that explains exactly why that door is essentially reinforced. We'll have to come back later to figure it out, but for now, that key leads us to room 202, which has the fire icon on the door. You would think that logically, because as a fire icon, there's a fire in the room, right? So you need some form of fire extinguisher or something of a sort, but it's actually the other way around. If you use the gun inside the room, you'll set the room on fire, killing you instantly. So you have to avoid the creature and go around the fence to unlock the bathroom door using the spare bathroom key. Inside, there's a secret passage behind the bathtub that leads us inside room 203. This is also the room where you'll most likely find a picture of a girl called Eva. She's one of the 3 people that we found notes written about them, and looking at it closer, she looks pretty similar to the girl covered in blood that we saw earlier. So let's take a break from the gameplay side of things and examine her a little closer. Eva has been at the hotel for a long time. She decided to start writing in order to pass the time, from which she ends up getting a lot of enjoyment from. As she was there during the construction of the hotel, she wrote about the different things that she saw, like the lead construction worker hiding in a corner before looking at the blueprints of the building. She also got a hold of the plans, and examining it further made her realize that they contain 3 rooms less than what the building actually has. She also mentions that the room 203 and 303 are connected together by a ladder, which is also the only time that the document helps guide the player at his goal of escaping. On top of all that, we also get a sense of loneliness as she seems isolated and bored all the time. The construction workers end up disappearing rapidly, and she ends up alone, wondering why her grandmother even sent her to the hotel. On the one lonely day, she gets the feeling that she's being stalked by someone in an orange jumpsuit and gets paranoid to the point that she stops exploring the hotel and locks herself in her room. Now, this is actually the interesting part, as there's a clear time jump in her writing. The next thing we know is that she doesn't know where she is, and all she can feel is agony. When examining her up close, we can see that she's in some sort of pain, as it's clear that she's not in the same situation, as she can roam around the hotel and seems to have some ghostly powers. So it all begs the question as to what exactly happened to her after her paranoia took over. Well, we won't have to wait too long, so with that said, let's get back in the game. 203 is the room that we're looking for, and before you ask, I have no idea why this room is the only way to get on top. There are only a handful of documents that have any use when traversing the map, and only one of them mentions that this room is connected to room 303, but it doesn't give any explanation as to why it's the case. Also, as this game is a key Easter hunt, all paths lead to this room, making it impossible to miss. We pulverize 2 plants, grab the ammo in the kitchen, and head up the ladder. Spoiler warning from here on out, so if you don't want to essentially get the whole game spoiled, thank you for watching. I hope I'll get the option to entertain you once more. And for the rest of us, let's just keep going. Once we're up the ladder, a big bag of bricks is in the middle of the room with a monster lurking on the other side. We walk around and grab the key on the table and great, there's a second monster inside the bathroom. We look at our inventory and realize that the key isn't for this room, as it's the key for room 301 and not 303. So we're left with no other option but to open fire, as logically the key is in the bathroom because everything of value happens in the bathroom. Once they've both become pools of blood, we enter the small room and the key is indeed inside the sink, so we turn back and exit the room. We go towards room 301 and there's Eva waiting for us at the locked gate. We disregard her presence for now and enter the adjacent room. As usual, there are more enemies, so we kill the plants before examining the room. Interestingly enough, there's a severed hand that looks pretty similar to the one that we lost right on the coffee table. We examined the rest of the room, and because we didn't find any new keys, we unlocked the bathroom, and wouldn't you know it, it was already occupied. I excuse myself by riddling it with bullets, and pick up the key from room 305. We leave the room, use the new key, and enter it to find... wow! I really actually like this room. It reminds me a little bit of Layers of Fear, and how it uses mannequins all the time to tell its story. We kill the plants and head to the kitchen to find the key to the padlock. Fun observation, this is the only time where there's a plant inside the bathroom and not another severed monster. With that, we leave the room and unlock the padlock. Yeah, that never got me either. And follow the lady inside the hotel. For some reason, the only way to get back to the main lobby of the hotel is by going through the 3rd floor. We're in the final stretch of the game, and it's full of monsters. We shoot them down and get ambushed by 2 more of those dismembered ladies. Fun fact, the statue at the end of the room doesn't have a physical presence, so you can enter it and the monsters will lose sight of you, so shoot away and go down the main floor once it's safe. Turn right and we can finally exit through the front door.
Shit! That's impossible! This can't be happening!
Well. It's impossible, isn't it? You know, I'm tired of looking at you. Look, it's getting a bit chilly in here. Lighting a fire wouldn't be a terrible idea. See you again. Let's see.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. What the fuck was that? Well, I understand you, because that's how I felt when I first finished the game. I was hoping that I would get answers at the end, but I'm even more clueless than before. I actually played this game with my brother, and he quit the game a little before we finished it. He was done with it at this point, and I decided to push onwards because I was hoping that the ending would give me some form of satisfaction, but it actually totally didn't. I would have also quit at that moment, and I wouldn't blame anyone if they actually did. But that's also when I reflected on the whole experience, and a question appeared in my mind, which was, what could I do differently to change the outcome? I mean, the whole game is about restarting and finding the right path to complete the task, so if the game has 4 campaigns, it must also have an adequate ending for the right path, right? Turns out that I was right, and better yet, this is also when the game actually started being fun. When you get the bad ending, we're teleported back inside the bathtub, but Everything is back as it was the first time when we were in the room. The drawer is still locked, the water's transparent, and the walls are back to normal. But we, the player, aren't back to square one. We know how the game is played. We know what's in store for us, and we're going to use that advantage to change the outcome and get the right ending this time, because goddamn, we deserve some fucking answers. We know that forcing the drawer open got us killed last time, so we're going to look around and see what we might have missed. We grab the combination lock again, which, mind you, has never reappeared in any of the campaigns, which means that it probably has the clue to opening the door. We looked around to see if we can find the 3-number combination, and as it turns out, the combination was inside the top drawer. Another fun fact, if you go through the achievement list, you'll see the achievement for going into all rooms is called 373, so the game gave us an alternative way to finding the code to open the box. Also, the reason we couldn't see the code the first time is because it was obscured by a document placed on top of it, and most people, including myself, would have been ignorant and wouldn't think of looking under the document. We were conditioned by other games to think that way, so it's actually a pretty genius idea. The code also doesn't appear in subsequent playthroughs, so you really have to look hard the first time to find it. The box gives us the key used to unlock the drawer so that we can grab our clothes again. We can also grab the key in the toilet and use it to unlock the small chest, which this time contains 2 bandages instead of a lockpick. We walk to the door and use the key, and as we didn't use force to open the drawer, we won't get attacked this time, and therefore we'll be able to proceed to the next room. Now, what's interesting is that it's the only time that this room has a real tangible puzzle. The centipede from the beginning is guarding the exit key. We therefore have 2 ways to proceed. We can either grab the boiler, fill it up with water from the sink, walk back and heat the water before pouring it on the thing, making it disappear. The other way to go is by examining the plant that magically appeared next to the bed. Interacting with it gives you a lockpick, which can be used to unlock the bread container. Inside is a salt dispenser, which we can pour on the creature, making it disappear as well. Either way, we can now grab the key and exit the room. The same QTE cutscene plays, so once we've completed it, we'll be inside the storage room and we'll find a map, some resources, and weirdly enough, a name tag of the lead construction worker, the one that we mentioned before in the text. For now, we're going to store it as we don't know why we've got it and head back outside. Same as the first time, there aren't any enemies around, so we can take the time to explore and see if we've missed something on our subsequent playthrough. If we head towards the pool, we'll see an X painted on the ground. Your instinct here will be to leave, as I did the first time, but if you hold that thought and look at the pool, you'll see a container floating with a key inside. In true horror game fashion, we lose the item, but gain the key to 210. That means that we now have key 111, which we found in a storage room on every playthrough, and this one, which gives us an alternative path that we can follow, but there's actually a 3rd key that we can find. This one eluded me for the longest time, until I looked at the achievements and saw that there's an achievement for digging up a key. I looked around and found a small circle in front of the skull that I can interact with. I looked around and found a shovel in the corner next to the retractable ladder. Full disclosure, it can also appear in the small dead end after room 111, but if the shovel doesn't appear and you can't find it, just enter a random room and leave it as it makes the items move around. The same thing happens with the hotel keys. I found in one of the rooms that the key had the chance of appearing inside a wooden toilet next to the entrance door, and as I wanted to save my ammunition and health, I restarted the game and kept reloading the room until the key appeared inside the toilet, making me skip the whole encounter. With that, we grab the shovel and head to the dig site where we can grab the key to room 101. That means that, realistically speaking, there are 3 open paths available to us and all 3 lead to the room 203. Room 111 leads us to the key 202, which you can use to get access to the trapdoor inside the bathroom, which is what you saw previously. Key 101 leads us to the key number 203, and finally, key 210 leads us to the spare key of room 203, making it the only room that has a spare key. Each path has its own unique challenges, and if you want the achievement of going inside all of them, you'll have to do all 3 paths to completion, which isn't too long as each path forces you to go through around 3 rooms each. What I really find impressive here is how much these paths feel so different from the playthrough that I showed you before. For example, here's the room 103 from the previous playthrough. And here's the same room in this playthrough. Worlds apart, right? And this version of the campaign also has puzzles and no enemies, interestingly enough. There's a weird baby crying in the crib and a ritual circle on the floor, which you can interact with. You'll also find some cubes with letters on them in the kitchen, so clearly we're supposed to make a word out of the cubes. This is also the room where we get to grab the bag for the final inventory upgrade. By unlocking the bathroom, we can grab the floating duck and look under it to find the word job written on it with black ink. Grab the 3 matching cubes, spell the word in the pentagram, and wait for the spell to evaporate the kid, leaving the key to room 202 in its stead. Room 109 still functions in a similar way as before, but now we can light the room and complete the puzzle inside. There's a combination lock inside the same locked piece of furniture from before, but this time, we need to find a way to unlock it and find the combination to the box. Interacting with the roulette makes the combination appear, and for unlocking the small door, there are 2 ways of doing it, as you can find the key to unlock it, or you can simply break it open. Depending on how the room loads, you may either find the key in the barrel in the corner of the room, or you'll have to bribe the slot machine by finding the only token that it accepts, which is always located in the kitchen sink. Inserting the cone makes the key drop out of the box, allowing you to unlock the door. The alternative to this is to grab the brick that Math baptizes as Josh.
It's just a brick. I'll call him Josh.
Josh is the name of the guy that texted us at the beginning of the game. Using the brick breaks the glass and makes a monster appear, making in another instance where using violence makes the situation worse. Either way you decide to do it, just rotate the padlock with the same combination on the table and grab the key before exiting the room. When examining the room that leads to room 209, there's a new icon that appeared on the door. Looking at it, we realize that we need the name tag that we found in the storage room. If we try to get in without it, the room would loop us back outside, preventing us from accessing the room, so we walk back to the storage room, pick up the item, and try again. This time, instead of having to kill a plant on the table and the Siamese twins as we had to do before, we just need to avoid the creepy monster and grab the key from the table. It's a pretty big letdown considering the fact that the screaming that we heard from the pool came from this room, creating an awesome build-up which honestly doesn't really pay up much, so thanks, I guess. Do you remember the big metal door in room 108? Well, this time there's actually a puzzle to solve it in order to open it. There are 5 vials with numbers written on them, and only one of them will open the door. So we look around the room, and as it turns out, the solution is pretty straightforward. Look at the numbers on the wall and pick the vial with the number that isn't there, which in this case is vial 96. Put it in the locked door and wait for it to unlock. Kill the creature inside and grab the key to room 203. With that said, I don't really know why this room has such a weird door. I believe that there's some symbolism in it, but the game itself never explains it. On another note, this is also the perfect time to mention that this is the first time that I had to kill something in this playthrough, as there aren't that many enemies lurking around, with some enemy types completely missing. You won't see any plants or Siamese twins in this playthrough, making the game a lot easier and the antidote obsolete. This is also the easiest way of getting the Sly Fox achievement, which is to not shoot the gun during a full playthrough. You can easily decide to skip the rooms that force you in an encounter and stealth your way out of those which require it, creating a more tense gameplay centered around puzzle solving instead of a more combat-based gameplay. I personally prefer this approach, as combat is passable in this game to say the least, and the repetition of enemies really makes the whole portion of the game annoying. I had a lot more fun playing this version of the campaign than I did the previous one. Unfortunately, that's how most people will experience the game, because the game is made in a way that encourages you to die, either by design or by bad implementation of game mechanics. Now, using the key 203 unlocks the room, and this time there aren't any enemies and the ladder is blocked by some weird intestine thing with eyes. To remove it, you have to grab the gasoline in the kitchen and the matches in the drawer to do what's pretty much obvious at this point. Going to the room above, there aren't any enemies this time, and the keys to all 3 rooms of the 3rd floor are on the table, with one key being incarcerated inside a green substance. To liberate the key, we need to grab the container in the kitchen, pour it inside the bathtub, throw the key inside, and grab it with the clamps located inside the wooden toilet. Once outside, we went straight towards room 305, which was the room where we found all those mannequins hanging around. This time, however, there are only 2 mannequins and no enemies, allowing us to freely walk around and explore the room. It is clear by the position of these mannequins that they're suggesting the act of playing music, which means that there's another puzzle to solve. On the bed, you'll find a violin, and the bathroom contains a music sheet. After placing both items in their respectable places and pushing the piano player closer, music is heard in the room. and we receive a key to the padlock next to the room 301. Speaking of which, if you go inside that same room, you won't find a severed hand on the night table, but a bowl with human organs. After exploring the room and not finding anything of use, we can open the bathroom door, kill the creature inside, and grab the bolt cutter. Both the key and the bolt cutter can be used to unlock the padlock. Interestingly enough, using the bolt cutter, which would, in my opinion, represent the more violent way of completing the puzzle as it makes the padlock obsolete, doesn't make a monster appear. It's actually inconsequential, so I don't know why it is that way, but in my opinion, it hinders the logic of the game. We go inside the hotel, and we can immediately see that a lot has changed, as well as the walls are clean and there aren't any plants or Siamese twins. The only monster we'll encounter this time is the same one that we've been seeing from the start. After bypassing it or killing it, whichever you prefer, we get to the deserted lobby, and this is where the payoff of the game really starts.
My head. Shit. I can't get to the exit. I should follow that girl.
This time, the path forward is blocked, so we're gonna have to follow the lady to the other room. We avoid the only Siamese twins in this campaign and enter the room with the door closing behind us. If you didn't try to kill it and got in without getting hit, you'll get an achievement called Failed Attempt. We now find ourselves locked inside this new room, and we need to find a way to burn those tentacle things on the door. By examining the room, we can combine the bottle with the fire icon and a rag, making a Molotov. And as for the fire, we can either use the fireplace or the lighter located on top of said fireplace. Using the lighter will get the Good Choice achievement, and it's also considered the less aggressive approach, even if throwing a Molotov at something, no matter what it is aggressive by nature. Whatever. Once the intestine vines are burned, we can now exit the room, follow the path, and enter the kitchen where we're greeted by the rarest monster of them all. Evil.
Shit! Fuck. I think I can sneak in through a vent here. Shit!
We now have to hurry to the other side of these industrial vents while the monster tries to catch us by shaking the air vent. All of them except one will shake, so we just have to wait until it stops before continuing towards the exit. The vent leads us back to the central area, and from there we can just head back towards the now unlocked front door and finally exit the hotel.
Yes!
For real
I
this
made it
time.
out. Shit! That's impossible! This can't be happening!
Well, it looks like Eva fried your brain after all. I'd best get out of here before your stench fills the air. Oh, what is this? Seems like someone has taken a walk through my laboratory without permission. You stay right here. That's right. Dead people don't move. Goddamn fool.
Where is that fucking crackpot? Ah, fuck. I have to get out of here.
Now, this is where the game attempts to make sense, as we now get to explore the room in which we were held captive. This section also contains the documents that the bald guy wrote, making these the most important documents in the game, as they literally explain everything that's happening in this game. They are also only accessible if you get the good ending, which means that you didn't die during the whole playthrough. If you did, it would look something like this.
I need to get out of here. Shit!
What an idiot. And he thought he could escape. I hope your flesh can at least be used to feed the dogs.
A leg and an arm missing is pretty similar to what we just saw, with the key difference being that we were too weak to get to the elevator, so we'll be apprehended and dragged back. We already saw the bad ending where we die burning in the bathtub, and it's the same ending if we ended up losing all our lives in the game. Additionally, all these endings are followed by the man answering a phone call and giving a status report to some lady about how we met our end, while mentioning that he has two other subjects to interrogate. Now though, as we survived intact, we're not forced into a cutscene and get to explore the area, and as this is where we get access to the really important documents, it is more than time for me to explain concretely what the story is all about. Doc, the man in the orange jumpsuit, has been studying the science of biotechnology, which is the process of using biological and living organisms, as well as their derivatives, to modify and or create a new process or product. This is a very complicated way of saying that it's the science of combining living things together, like plants, animals, and human substances, in order to create a new product or procedure that will, ideally, help ameliorate the situation of the organism consuming and or receiving the product. One common example of this would be the creation and use of medicine. He was planning on testing that assumption by creating a better and long-lasting human being, or, in other words, immortality. For 40 years, he has experimented on himself and has modified about 30% of his body, with the key changes being made to his lungs, kidneys, and urethra. Yeah, I'm not kidding. He modified his own urethra by himself. Ridiculous. He has also experimented on other people, of course, and the accumulation of his research has led him to create a machine that he has nicknamed Oxide. But what it is exactly is never explained in the game. All we know is that it requires a human host to be used as its processor, and around this time, he met an old lady that was interested in his research. She had agreed on single-handedly funding the whole project by giving him money, the hotel, and the most crucial piece of all, her own granddaughter, Eva. She gave him her granddaughter so that she could potentially live longer, and that's what I assume, as her motives are never really explained, and what we know of her is limited to the interpretations of the phone calls that happened at the end of each ending. Doc also lucked out, and even more, as Eva was the only one that was successful in creating a parallel world in her mind that she could use to take refuge when the times got tough. She could find herself in this mental state for hours, as he ended up dubbing this mental state the metaverse. By keeping her in such a poor state, the machine is able to tap into the essence and force her to take refuge into her own mind so that he can, in return, exploit it and continue his research. That's why we can hear a girl crying in the hotel, and why we hear the same voice under the hood. It hits harder when we examine the picture of her and realize that we can't even see her, as the clash between both would be too extreme. Imagination is a powerful thing, and it's impressive how your mind can make the situation so much worse just by interpreting the little hints and clues that we have. The twist of the game is that once Doc found out that she had the ability of creating the metaverse and that she can somehow tap into it, he found a way to send people there in order to extract information, which is represented by the papers that the player finds in his playthrough. As they're written by the person's subconscious, the information found in those documents end up being 100% genuine and therefore an amazingly accurate source of information. In other words, the whole game happens in this girl's mind, and all the papers that you find are representations of the subject's inner thoughts, to which Doc is somehow able to read, which is never explained. In order to strengthen the bond between the victim and Eva, torture is required from both hosts, which is why he severs your limbs in each death scene. This is also why the game gets harder, because your real body is in poor state, and the shock of adrenaline mixed in with the Oxide project forces the world to get modified in consequence, making it rustier and riddled with enemies. That same logic applies to Eva, as when she was forced into becoming the processor for his master plan, the pain and anger caused by the accumulation of everything created a split in her personality, birthing a monster which we can see in few intervals dubbed evil, which is the derivative of her real name. That means that the lady covered in blood is what's left of her humanity and goodwill, which is ultimately why she guides the player to the exit of the hotel. Evil, on the other hand, is the embodiment of every negative energy in her body, which is why all she wants to do is rip your jaw off. Symbolically, this manifestation is represented by the creature we see everywhere, as it represents, in my opinion, the split between her human side and the demonic side, with the anorexia showcasing the neglect that she got at the hands of the scientist, forcing her to tread the line between her past and what she's become. Now though, this all begs the question as to why we're playing as Matt, and why was he placed inside Oxide if he has nothing to do with the whole experiment? Well, when we read through the documents, we found out that Matt does odd jobs around the world, and has never questioned what he was doing or with whom he was working with, as long as he got paid handsomely. At one point, he met a man called Josh, which he despises, but as he pays really well, he didn't care what the man does or what he made him do. The common theme that comes from the documents is the theme of ignorance. He consciously blocks all information in his mind, preventing him from feeling any form of guilt or even responsibility, to the point that he felt that he was the victim in all of this. He thought that because all parties involved are adults, it was therefore okay for him to do what he had to do, as everyone gets what they deserve, and getting rich in the process is a justifiable reason. We also learned from the documents that Josh is the one providing the human subjects to Doc, and that their deal was that Josh would only kidnap prostitutes with no family or close relatives, use them for his own needs while filming the whole thing, and then give the girls to Doc so that he can use them for what he calls the greater good of humanity. Matt, in response, would take care of the money laundering and selling videos to the black market. As you've probably guessed by yourself, Matt had no idea what he was selling or what the other two were doing, as by reading the documents collectively, we see that he's in denial about literally everything. This is also apparent when we read about a new voice that appears in his mind and makes him question reality, turning him insane as the realization doesn't fit with the story he built for himself. Josh, on the other hand, we know almost nothing about, as the whole game is centered around Matt, and because he chose ignorance, we don't know why, how, or what he was doing in his videos. We know that he knew that what Doc was up to, as he warns Matt not to go inside the hotel at the beginning of the game, and that he was the one handling over the prostitutes to him, but that's about it, honestly. We can only speculate, but as everything is happening in Eva's imagination, it's hard to pinpoint what is based on real facts and what is fiction, or to the very least, we can consider it partially true. Although, we do know one thing for sure, which is that Josh got careless and ended up bringing an undercover cop, posing as a prostitute to the hotel, jeopardizing the whole operation. Paranoid, Doc tried to put the cop in Oxide, but Eva ended up rejecting her for some unknown reason which is never explained, so he decides that he would resort to torture to find out what she was aware of. He also suspected that both Josh and Matt had something to do with it, so he kidnapped both of them and ended up putting Matt in the machine first, in the hope of finding why the cop was brought there and if he knew anything about it all, and if it wasn't clear already, he didn't have a single clue. And that's why, my dear viewers, I kept all the lore related stuff at the end of this video, as most of the documents weren't useful and the ones from Doc are essentially a huge exposition dump. As Matt purposefully kept himself blind to what was happening, he had almost no idea as to what he was participating in. All the documents are about his lifestyle and how he used his childhood traumas as a shield, protecting him from all wrongdoings as he was the victim in his mind. All he did was for his own greater good, as no one else had value to him, so it didn't matter if what he needed to do as long as he got paid in full every time. This facade crumbles the longer he stays in Oxide, as the voice penetrates his mind and forces him to question his practices, and as much as all of this sounds interesting in concept, it doesn't work here because the documents repeat so much, and you find way too many of them in every room, making it a key hunt and a document hunt, which really becomes tedious rapidly. Eva talks about her love for writing and of the weird things that she saw around the hotel until she gets forced into Oxide, creating evil in the process. It is important to mention that Eva has also no idea of what's happening, as she can feel the pain inflicted on her while in Oxide, but isn't aware of the role that she has to play in it. Half of her documents are about her being in pain, but from the player's perspective, it doesn't help us piece together what's happening. Good storytelling is more than just about writing exposition, but actual environmental and intuitive storytelling. If I had to give a concrete example as to why the storytelling here is bad, I would point the role that evil has in this game. If you've seen any horror movie or played a video game about someone being hunted by an evil entity, you already know what her sole purpose is. So why did we have to get so many documents telling us about the most cookie cutter text imaginable when we could have easily come to the same conclusion ourselves? If you look at the earrings on the monster and the ones that Eva has in the picture, you'll see that they're identical. We also know how it was created by reading Eva's documents, so why add to the repetitiveness when removing them would have made it much more enjoyable and would have left something to the interpretation, as there's enough meat here for us to paint the bigger picture. Instead, the game solidifies some unnecessary aspects while loosely or straight up never explaining the other more important or even crucial aspects, which I will get into very soon. With all that said and done, we get to look at Eva one last time before heading outside the room. We go under the table like we did before, and as we have all our limbs, we are able to run to the elevator and lock ourselves in without bleeding to death. Doc tries to grab us, to which we can retaliate by chopping his hand off with the axe on the floor. And looking at him suffer as we activate the lift to go upstairs, exiting the hotel for real this time. Now, before I end this freakishly long video, I want to mention that there's a lot of story elements that aren't explained in the game and that leave a lot of unanswered questions. For starters, why was Matt covered in blood at the beginning of the game? Why did they decide to put Josh in the machine first if he was working hand in hand with Josh? And consequentially, why didn't we play as Josh instead? It would have been a lot more interesting as he was aware of everything and has committed the heinous acts, so wouldn't it have made more sense from a story perspective and gameplay perspective to play as him and not Matt? Most crucial of all, we also don't know how Oxide even works. Nothing is connected to the bathtub, and there isn't any liquid in it, so does it work by Wi-Fi? If we examine Eva closely, there are cables coming from the back of the chair, so why aren't you connected to anything? If we follow that line of thought further, if suffering is the key to access Oxide, and you don't need anything special or any specific equipment to get inside, does it mean that Doc will end up in Oxide because he's missing his hand now? And if not, why is a bathtub really that necessary when clearly anything could have been used instead? Lastly, why did that old hag sacrifice her granddaughter? I would have liked to know what motivates all these people, as the game gives zero answers to any of the questions, leaving me feeling unsatisfied in general. If building intrigue was the whole point while leaving other stuff to interpretation, then the devs did it wrong in my opinion, because that intrigue needs to be supplemented with a good story that explains the important parts and leaves the complementary things to interpretation, therefore making the whole process feel earned and not as required to the understanding as what's happening. One excellent example are the classic games of Silent Hill, as it tells a really good story that motivates the player while encouraging them to reflect on the things that aren't explained by weaving a lot of symbolism from different cultures. For example, in Silent Hill 2, the places and enemies that James encounters represents a piece of his past, directly correlating with the main story, which is to find his wife after spending 4 years thinking that she was dead. Everything had a reason to be, and it's by analyzing James and how he reacts to the outside world that allows us to understand what things that aren't explained can represent. Here, you can't do that, as it doesn't let you wonder, as they neglected a lot of the core parts of the story. I have the Platinum Trophy on PS5. I finished this game about 9 times in order to get all the footage I needed for this video, and I also went online to see what other people thought, to no avail, making it feel like a letdown. I also showed this game to a bunch of different people, including my best friend, and they ended up telling me the same thing, which was that the game was intriguing until I explained them what the story was, and I think it speaks for itself. So, after reflecting on it all, the big question is, would I recommend you the game? Well, I honestly think I would, but it really depends on what kind of gamer you are, because this game is really grindy. As you've seen, you have a lot of identical rooms, identical enemies, there's no variety in what you're doing, so it can get very tedious and boring fast. But at the same time, I think it's original enough to be able to stand on its own. I mean, you get 4 different campaigns, which change depending on how you die. It makes sort of sense lore-wise, and it changes how you also play the game, which I think is really cool. It gives you that like roguelite touch without actually being a roguelite. Plus, it is made, you know, by 2 people, and it's their first horror game, so I really think that it's actually cool that they succeeded in doing something that to the very least is interesting, minus all of the negative factors that I've made clear throughout this video, right? I actually, as you know, bought the physical version of this game, and what's actually interesting is they partnered with a forest restoration company, and they plant a tree for every copy that they sell physically. Now, don't run and get the physical copy, because like I paid 50 for it and it's totally not worth that much money, but it is actually cool to see that, you know, people are starting to innovate and try to do new things. Like, imagine if like a big company like Ubisoft or EA decides to do that, right? Like, imagine for every Assassin's Creed copy or Madden copy or FIFA or whatever, when they sell a physical, they plant a tree. Like, that would be millions and millions and millions of trees, right? Of course, it doesn't compensate for the pollution of actually making the plastic, the CD, the work. It is at least an interesting step in what I believe to be a good direction. So with that, like and subscribe and let me know how you found it. Is this a game that you'll end up playing, or did you find it interesting? Or is it something you're just not going to consider? I also want to take this time to thank my family and friends, and especially my brother, for proofreading the script and giving me the thumbs up. So thanks for making the gamer's dream a reality. I hope I'll be able to entertain you on the next video.